You're listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. Join us as we explore new frontiers in consciousness, science, and evolution. And now here's your host, Karen Curry Parker.
The wisdom of the Mahavidyas, the 10 wisdom goddesses who represent the interconnected darkness and light within us all, has been steeped in esoteric and mystical descriptions that made them seem irrelevant to ordinary life. The power to heal ourselves lies in our power to understand the story of what is happening to us. Our brains are actually hardwired to learn from stories. Young children learn about the values of their society on the laps of their parents and grandparents in the form of stories and fairy tales. The right hemisphere of the brain is designed to learn from the emotional and sensual essence of stories and the archetypes of the heroes in the tales. We can use the power of archetypes, such as the Mahavidyas, and their stories to heal ourselves and see the importance of what our life journey holds for us, and most importantly, is teaching us. Hi, welcome to Quantum Conversations. I'm Karen Curry Parker, and I'm excited today to be talking to Dr. Kavitha Chinnaiyan. Dr. Kavitha Chinnaiyan is an author who has written a book called Shakti Rising. She teaches about what she calls the direct path, which is an incredibly powerful way of accessing archetypes and discovering the shadow side as well as the light side of the influences of energy in your life. In her book, she talks about how you can use the archetype of various Eastern goddesses to discover not only what might be holding you back from creating what you really want in your life, but how to harness your energy in such a way that you can really fulfill the potential and the full expression of who you truly are. Dr. Chinnaiyan blends her expertise in cardiology with her knowledge in Ayurveda, yoga, Vedanta, Tantra, and the direct path in her program for patients to discover bliss amid chronic illness, which sounds like an incredible counterintuitive journey, but a powerful, powerful journey that allows people to align with what's going on the inner plane and how to manifest peace and bliss from the inner plane to the outer. She is an integrative cardiologist in Michigan, and I can't wait to listen and actually learn, because I'm going to learn a lot, and I think you all are too, today about how she blends these ancient esoteric sciences with her modern practice in medicine. Welcome, Dr. Chinnaiyan.
Oh, thank you so much, Karen. It's such a pleasure to be here.
So I just have to say that I'm going to start and keep this very simple, at least from the beginning, because you use a lot of Eastern esoteric terms in your book, which I think, by the way, is a beautiful, powerful book. I really enjoyed the exercises. It's so practical, and it really gives you some concrete ways of tapping into this knowledge that you're bringing forth. But I have to do some vocabulary work with you first. So I want to start first, and I want to talk about, and you talk a lot about this in the chart, what is non-duality?
Yeah. So non-duality, to understand what non-duality is, we need to understand what duality is. And duality is this kind of push and pull that we feel, constantly in our lives. This is good, that is bad, this is right, that is wrong, this is me, this is everybody else. And that sense of duality, of always being, in opposition to something, is really the basis for a lot of our suffering, because we want some things, we don't want some things. We like some things, we dislike some things. And we prefer certain things, we don't prefer certain things. And so life teaches us that we can like things all we want or prefer things all we want, but it's going to give us what it's going to give us. And so we have suffering, we have joy, but it's never really a steady thing. We're always going through these kinds of polarities. And that is the basis of duality. And non-duality is the understanding of the unification within which all of the dualities rest. So it's the concept, or it's not even a concept, it is the realization that, all these polarities and these dualities are within our minds. And actually, when we step out of the limitations of the mind, then there is no you and me. There isn't an us versus them. There isn't a good or bad. There isn't, the right or wrong. All of these things kind of fade away when we understand non-duality. And that non-duality understanding or realization of non-duality comes from understanding who we really are, because all our dualities come from taking ourselves to be these limited bodies with these names and these stories. And when we step out of that, we see that who we really are isn't limited to this body and to this mind and to this history and to this story and to this culture and whatever it is that we consider our identity to be. And when we realize that about ourselves, we realize that about everybody else. And so what we see is that there isn't two, there isn't an opposition. And that is the principle of non-duality.
Oh, it makes total sense. And I think, I'm thinking about this, first of all, in the context between Newtonian physics and quantum physics. And, Newtonian physics sort of has this very formulaic, this or that, and this, you apply this formula and you get this result. And of course, as we move into a quantum understanding, I think it unleashes us from these old formulas.
Yes, exactly. So that linearity goes away, and we see that everything is really a circular thing. Everything is rising and collapsing in this eternal moment, which is now. Exactly what you're saying about quantum physics. So that linearity is what keeps us in that cycle of this and that and duality.
Perfect. So in your book, you talk about, and forgive me if I say this wrong, but the Mahavidyas, which are which are essentially goddesses. And they are goddesses that are archetypes that bring us different lessons and show us different places where we carry lightness and darkness. And what I love about it is that you integrated in each of these archetypes, and these aren't your archetypes. I know they're archetypes that come from your Eastern lineage. Each one of these Mahavidyas has sort of an interesting conflict or conundrum in the way in which they express themselves. They have sort of this scary exterior, some of them, but yet this peaceful message. They can be kind of, I think, frightening if you're looking at it from a polarized perspective or from a dualistic perspective. It's sort of hard to see the blessing in the images somehow as they're presented. Talk to me a little bit about who the Mahavidyas are and what do each of them bring to us?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. So as you probably know, there are a lot of deities and gods and goddesses that we can work with in the Eastern tradition, many of the other traditions as well. And in one particular tradition, which is a tantric tradition, there is a sequence of goddesses. And these 10 goddesses are known as the Mahavidyas, and they are forms of Shakti. So before we get into that, we should probably talk a little bit about what that even means. So Shakti is the divine feminine. And so when we look at the absolute divine, the absolute divine consciousness, or the supreme divine consciousness from which everything arises, really doesn't have a gender. There is no such thing as that is male or female. It has no gender. But within that potential, before time, before space, and before creation, this supreme divine consciousness rests as a potential. And the first movement within that potential is that seeming separation of Shakti or the divine feminine from Shiva or the divine masculine. And so if you look at, a picture of yin and yang, they are perfectly symmetrical and perfectly one. And so it is with Shiva and Shakti. So Shiva is this eternal awareness that cannot move. Shiva is still and has no movement. That is that principle of divine masculine. And Shakti is all movement that occurs in that divine supreme being. So she is the creator of everything. She is the basis for creation. So when I say she doesn't do anything by herself. It is Shiva and Shakti together that bring forth all of the manifestation of everything that we see and everything that we cannot see. So all the energies, thoughts, emotions, and unseen energies and unseen particles, everything is a form of Shakti. So like we give birth to a child, but when we give birth to a child, we become two separate beings. There's me and there's my child. But Shakti, the way she works is she gives birth to the universe, all of the forms in the universe, but she becomes those forms. So everything we see in manifestation is a form of Shakti. And because there are infinite number of forms, there are infinite forms of Shakti. And among them, there are 10 of these group of 10 goddesses or forms of Shakti known as the Mahavidyas. And they are called Mahavidyas because Maha is great and Vidya means wisdom. So these are 10 great goddesses of wisdom or the goddesses of great wisdom. So what's unique about these 10 goddesses is each of them represents a cosmic force, such as time and space and everything that is needed for the process of creation. And, that is one thing that they all have in common. The other thing they all have in common is that they are all exceptionally fierce, as you said, in their imagery. And the reason for that in Tantra is this idea that we have about the feminine or the masculine. So if I asked you, Karen, how would you define a goddess? What would you say?
I would say a goddess is a deeply creative archetype that, yeah.
But what's your impression? And that's, you obviously have done a lot of this work, but if you asked a common person, on the street what a goddess is, the general definition we have of the goddess is that she is exceptionally beautiful and, has this luscious body. She is the perfect lover, the perfect mother. And on top of her ethereal beauty, she has all these magical powers. But when we really think about that, in terms of the definition of beauty and of femininity, who do you think defines that? Do you think women define that?
Meaning you think women are giving themselves that definition?
And I think what I was getting at is, these definitions that we have about what a woman should be, they don't come from a woman. That's not passed on through the centuries by women, right? These are standards that men have given to women, that this is what's beautiful and that's what's not beautiful in a woman.
Ha.
So
that is literally the conversation I had with my husband last night.
So, I mean, these are, these kinds of definitions that we kind of face on a daily basis in the media and, in what we see in our young people, and not just young people, even us, or older women. We have kind of been imprisoned in this idea of what we should look like, what we should be like, based on somebody else's definitions that have been passed on. And as if that it's not hard enough for women to reach those standards, even the goddess doesn't escape that, that definition of that patriarchal definition of beauty and what a goddess must be. So the Mahavidyas, if you look at them, they defy all those definitions. There is no such standard when it comes to what a goddess should be. right? And they are exceptionally fierce, and they are fierce for a particular reason. It really startles us out of complacency. We get so deeply rooted in our dualities and in our ways of being. And even though we know that our ways of thinking and being are not serving us, we simply kind of get stuck in that. So when you look at an image of a Mahavidya, these fierce goddesses, it just if we do it in the right way, they just really catapult us out of those kinds of complacent ideas and concepts we have about ourselves. And that is the purpose of that, to startle us out of that, to see that there is a greater reality that we may not be paying attention to. So that is the purpose of the imagery of the Mahavidyas. But what is so beautiful about their imagery is within that image of whatever that goddess looks like and she is doing in that image, we have basically the whole story of our lives and how we are trapped in our suffering and how we can be free of it. And, within that imagery, the goddess shows us where our own shadows lie and how we can step out of those shadows. So that is the unique aspect of the Mahavidyas. And the other aspect of them is, if you look at the Hindu goddesses, they tend to be consorts, and they are partners of male gods. And they're there as being supportive of the male deity. But not so with the Mahavidyas. They take center stage. Each goddess takes center stage. And Shiva is shown as being secondary, not because this is some, weird feministic idea, but it shows us that stillness that is the basis of who we are is forgotten in the drama of the forms that we get involved in. And so Shiva, who represents that still awareness, our true nature, which is undying, eternal, blissful nature, is forgotten because we are so entrenched and entranced by all the forms of our thoughts and our, the objects that we come in contact with and our interactions and our emotions and our stories. We get so trapped in those that Shiva is forgotten. So that's the purpose of showing Shiva as being subservient to the goddess in these images.
So you are a doctor of the heart.
Yeah.
And I love that. One of the things that you do is you incorporate, some of this work with your clients so that you can help them find, I'm assuming, a path through suffering to a place of acceptance.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about what you see when you work with your cardiology patients. How do you bring them to this place of understanding that maybe they're in resistance or maybe they're in a dualistic perspective? How do you help them find the bliss amidst the suffering?
Yeah. So, the conundrum of, the human life is that we are all stuck in that. It's not just people who are suffering from disease, but even those who are not suffering from disease are really stuck in this cycle of joy and sadness and, good thing and bad thing and all that. So when we talk about resistance, for instance, look at all these campaigns we have about, fighting heart disease or fighting Alzheimer's or fighting cancer or fighting whatever it is that we are fighting. And so here is the thing. It's completely wonderful to find new ways of treatment and to find new technologies for treating the diseases that afflict all of us, right? Afflict the human race. But what it isn't is it's not a fight, because you can't win that war. The disease always wins. The disease always wins because it's not a unified multifactorial thing. So you don't get heart disease, for instance, from doing one thing. You get heart disease because of a lot of things you've done throughout your life that have resulted in this particular issue. So there is no fighting heart disease without fighting our own demons. You know what I mean? So our demons of how we live and how we are so stuck in our lifestyle that we can't make those changes that are needed. I can talk about diet and exercise and quitting smoking and all that. But it's really difficult for people to do that because, we are so stuck in our ways, in our conditioned mindset and in our what we consider to be our story. Oh, but this is my culture. I grew up on meat and potatoes. It's really hard for me to give that up. You know what I mean? But how can you fight heart disease when you're not able to fight your own demons? Because heart disease is just a consequence of how we have lived all our lives, how we have thought. Oh, I have patients that tell me, I'm so stressed. And this is pretty much 100% of people I see, 100% of people I interact with, because this is the not modern life, where everybody is super stressed and doing too much and trying to get somewhere. Everybody's in the rat race. And then you expect heart disease or cancer or something else to not happen? How's that going to work? Right? So that resistance is actually not to anything more than our own shadows, of not being able to see and work with our own issues. It isn't a problem that lies outside of us, right? And even when we have disease, is it possible to accept it to a place where we can have a loving relationship with it? It doesn't mean we don't take medicines, we don't undergo surgeries or procedures. Of course, we do all that. But the relationship we have with the disease itself is a cause of stress. So if I have heart disease and I'm always thinking I shouldn't have this, this is ruining my life, guess what it's going to do? So it's going to create all these neurohormonal pathways that are, the body is flooded with more stress, and it's going to create more and more disease, right? So that resistance is primarily to our seeing of our own problems and our own issues. And the disease is simply an external manifestation of how we have lived. And of course, there are genetic factors and so on, but they are less so the problem in heart disease. And so that's what I see.
So I want to talk about two different things. The first thing I really just want to talk about for a second is, how do you then introduce your cardiac clients to this process of working with the Mahavidyas to bring them back into alignment with what's happening?
No, I don't, unless, this is something that comes from them when they're interested in that. Not everybody's interested in working with Shakti like this. But I do have, a lot of the self-enquiry practices and so on that are in the book. I do work with patients and other people during workshops and retreats and so on. So, I recommend meditation, I recommend other techniques, and then I invite people to look at their problems once they have a grounding in meditation, because that is the fundamental necessity when doing this kind of deep work.
Good. So I live with my husband, and I always joke with him. I always tell him, you enjoy suffering. You love it. His favorite thing to do first thing in the morning is to open up CNN and walk around the house shaking his head, right? So, but I do think, especially in this last year and a half in America, there's been this, it's not just America, I think globally, there's just been this, what to me feels like this drama of upheaval and I think increased duality thinking and tension and stress. And you go on Facebook and everybody's enjoying talking about, who got indicted or who said this or who tweeted that. And I feel like collectively, it's kind of brought up the shadow side of maybe a real addiction that we have to, I don't know, suffering or drama or whatever you want to call it. Talk to me for just a minute about people who are feeling at this point exhausted from it. What can they do to find or reclaim some kind of sense of empowerment and control over what feels like maybe a spiraling world that they don't feel like they have a lot of control over?
Yeah. One of the things that I really stress on in my workshops, and, a lot of people who have taken it in my workshops will tell you how beautifully this works, is number one, stop watching the news. Don't get pulled into this collective negativity, because, what happens is all of us have negativity, all of us have positivity, but somehow the negative energy loves to collaborate. So what you see is, negative people have this way of banding together and creating more and more and more, escalating whatever problem there is, escalating that to a point of where it becomes really so enticing to be entangled in that drama. And my whole approach to, this issue of news, and this is something I realized about myself a long time ago, where I just needed to watch one negative thing on TV and that's it. That would pretty much determine my whole day. And I realized this is really not serving, me in any way, because this... And if you notice, the news channels and politicians and all these people, they thrive on that negativity, the collective negativity. So it doesn't serve us, particularly if we want to progress on our own path of being free of suffering. And so I always say, don't watch the news. Trust that whatever you need to know, you will know. And really, that is exactly what happens. Even though I don't watch the news, I know what's happening. I know the current events, and I know that because whatever I need to know, I find out, in different ways. So just don't band with negative people, because especially, for a long time after we start working on ourselves, it's very easy to get swayed by others' opinions. And we don't want that on this spiritual journey. And the more you get entangled in that, the worse it gets. And, one of the things that really is important, like we were talking earlier about non-resistance. Non-resistance doesn't mean that we don't take action, that we don't, get up and move and do what we need to do. But it also, that non-resistance is an internal thing where you do everything that you need to do and then trust that, have this immense trust in the goddess or whatever it is that, makes sense to you, that it will be taken care of. And that's that. Because one thing I tell my patients and everybody who will care to listen is, if you can solve things by worrying about it or being anxious or stressed about it, go ahead. But just being stressed because it kind of scratches that itch of being involved in drama is really not serving us if our goal in life is to be free of suffering. So always my question is, what do you really want? That is the fundamental question that each of us needs to sit with for days and weeks and months and really figure out, what do I really want? Because I'll tell you what I want. And this goes like number 1 on my number 1, 2, 3, and up to 10 on my list is, I want to be free of suffering. And so whatever that takes, whether it is about my interactions with people or my understanding, my perception of the world and of myself and working on my own stuff, I'm committed to that. So that's what we need to do. We need to figure out, what do I really want? Because if you want drama, and you want to be involved in this upheaval that's going on in the world right now, which is, this upheaval that we are seeing, it seems shocking to people, but it isn't really shocking to me, because what's really happening is that things that were hidden are just coming into view. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not like, suddenly people are turning insane. It's not like that. It's just our collective insanity is just coming to the surface.
We've always been insane.
We've always been insane. It's just coming to the surface, right? And it's a good thing, because unless we see how insane we really are, we can't work on it. Because if you just cover over it and say all is well, we are not racial, we are not racists, we are not, we're not patriarchal, we're not misogynist, we are, wonderful people. That's BS, right? Because that's not true. And it doesn't matter how evolved we are, how industrialized we are, how many iPhones we have, or how many satellites we've sent into space. We are still human. And we have all these collective shadows within us that unless we are aware of it, we can't work on it. And so it's just coming out to the surface. And look at all the good things that are happening. We are becoming aware of it. Like the Metoo movement, for instance. It's like we are becoming aware and more aware, where we are moving towards a path where we are trying to figure out how to deal with it intelligently, wisely, and in a loving way that doesn't diminish us or anybody else, but we can sit in that fire and become purified, as a society, as a culture. And only then is there hope for something new. Because if things are hidden and it never comes to the surface, it just continues on, which is what has happened for centuries. And if we want something new, there's always an upheaval. And, that's what Kali, the first Mahavidya, shows us, is
Absolutely.
Upheaval, right? Upheaval is the way for something new to be born. The old needs to be unearthed, and it needs to be killed. That's what she's showing in her gory imagery, where she's on this killing spree. She's not killing people mercilessly. She's killing our old ideas and our old patterns so that the new and the fresh and the beautiful can be born.
Well said. Beautiful. So you have a new program coming up in March. You have an online study course. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a 12-week study course that's going to be based on Shakti Rising, where we'll explore each of these goddesses, one at a time, and see how she manifests in our own lives, and work very deeply with these 10 goddesses.
Beautiful. And you can find more information out about Kavitha's new course and more about her book and her work as well at her website. And it's kavithamd.com. I'm going to spell that for you guys. It's KavithaMD.com. Kavitha's book, Shakti Rising, Embracing Shadow and Light on the Goddess Path to Wholeness, is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Go grab a copy. I think it's such a, one of the things I really just love about this, and I want to thank you for, is that I love that you instill in us a deeper, more powerful understanding of the archetype of the goddess. And really, I think through this work, returned, at least to me, I felt returned as a woman back to a place of power that gave me a really great way of looking at how can I use this fire that is my natural energy to really create something new and powerful in my life. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for my education today. And
thank you.
When your heart is coherent, you sleep better, your focus improves, you feel calmer, you have decreased anxiety, decreased fatigue and depression. You also create peace and connection around you. The state of your heart And our natural desire to connect with the hearts of others not only increases our own state of health and well-being, it is through our hearts that we can be truly present to each other, rise above the things we think divide us, and create unity and peace. When your heart is coherent, it carries a higher frequency of energy that is broadcast through a magnetic resonance field that actually modulates the frequency of the hearts around you. Your heart has the ability to uplift those around you, to stabilize the energy of upheaval, and create peace in the world. By adding heart to your life and activating feelings of appreciation, love, compassion, kindness, and forgiveness, you not only feel better, science shows that you actually make it easier for the people around you to feel better too. Our hearts add to the energy of unconditional love and increase the chance of creating harmonious interactions with each other, helping humanity realize that we are truly one people, one tribe, one race, one heart, under the same sky, the same sun, and the same moon. Most importantly, our collective hearts set the course for our evolution. We will evolve. That part's inevitable. If we consciously evolve with heart, then the path to our evolution will be aligned with the full potential of humanity, the full potential of the human heart. It's time to consciously choose the course of our future. Let's do it with heart. If you'd like to discover the heart of who you truly are, please visit our Quantum Conversations Facebook page and get your free human design chart, your unique energy blueprint. While you're there, leave us a note and let us know who else you'd like to have a quantum conversation with. I'm Karen Curry Parker, sending out love from my heart to yours.
Thanks for listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. For more information, visit joyfulmission.com.